Okay. Good morning. Morning, Michael. We got one person.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Okay. Morning, Michael.
Morning, Rabbi.
Yeah, I'm just getting some back feed from the YouTube. Okay, there we are. Okay.
Anyone home?
Well, I'm here. We're about ready to begin. We're at the traditional 2-minute mark.
The screen is a little scungy.
It's okay. I'm going to fix it in a moment. Just going to. Give me 1 minute. I'm just connecting with the show Facebook. Okay. And now we'll go back to Zoom and the share screen and we'll begin. Okay. Okay. New share. And 1 second. No, not this one. 1 second. How's that?
That's nice.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to some health ideas, and I thought it was interesting in the light of the, of our care with hygiene of late, that the Chachamim were very concerned. Hands get everywhere, and there's all kinds of stuff anywhere. So Rab Mona would say, Yad la'ayin, someone who sticks his hand into his eye should be cut it off. Yad lechotem, don't stick your hand in your nose because you spread germs. Or they understood that. They didn't understand about germs, they understood about spreading disease. Yad lepeh, tikotetz, don't put your hand in your mouth. Yad leozen, don't put your hand in the air. Yad lechasuda, don't touch your a wound, get infected. Yad la'ama, don't touch your genitals. Yad lepita bas. Don't touch the opening of the anus, because all these things can cause problems. Yod legigis tikatzeis. Don't put your hand into a barrel of beer because it will affect the fermentation of the beer. Basically, there are certain yeasts and bacteria that combine to ferment beer, and if your hand has bad bacteria on it, and they outcompete the good ones in the beer, you're going to have a problem. Yod Masama, a person who touches his hand to his eye all the time can cause blindness. Yod Mechareshes, a hand can cause deafness. Yod Mala Polypus, a hand that touches the nose or mouth causes polyps. So there's a lot of bad bugs around, and don't touch anything with dirty hands. And this is just an example of the sages, something they observed in their lives, and they passed it on. And again, whatever the specifics of the medical aspects, this teaches us that as Jews, we need to pass on good advice about health. Tanya Rabbi Nosson Omer. Very interesting. The evil spirit that rests on a person's hands when they wake up doesn't go away till you wash your hands 3 times. That's why we wash our hands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 when we wake up in the morning. So the concept of this evil spirit is that when a person goes to sleep, one becomes unconscious. The soul leaves the body somewhat. So it's a little bit of death. And as you know, death brings impurity with it. So sleep is a small death, and therefore one needs to wash one's hands to remove this evil spirit, which basically means the taste of death. Omar Rabbi Yochanan Puch Maver Bas Melech, that there's a kind of puch is something you put in the eye, an eye ointment. It removes this evil spirit, may refer to a certain disease. Posek esadima removes tears, umaber seir b'afapayim, and improves the eyelashes. The first 2 are for everyone. The third is for women. Tanya Nami Ochra B'Yesomer Puchma. Okay, so the same thing. And again, and then we go on to say that, so now we're discussing things you can do for Shabbat for healing. This is already a halachic portion, so we'll move on. Basically, you're not allowed to do things for healing unless you're feeling very bad. Okay. And now we're going to move all the way to a discussion, which is Aggadot, because it's not strictly halacha. It's not strictly the laws of Shabbos, but it talks about the way we should respect the Shabbat. And it falls into the category of Aggadot. And we'll read it, especially because today's Erev Shabbat anyways, right? Okay. So in the book of Yeshayahu that some people read before Kiddush Shabbos morning, there's a list of things about how one should treat the Shabbat. Getting there. Hello. Okay. So this is in Yeshayahu 58. You should honor it from doing your ways. Honor it. How do you honor the Shabbat? That your Shabbat clothes should not be like your weekday clothes, but instead you should put on something nicer for Shabbat. He used to call his special clothes for Shabbat my honors. From doing your ways. You shouldn't walk on Shabbat like you do during the week. In the week, you're rushing here and there. Shabbat, you should walk, as is the case, all your work is done. Take it easy. There's no rush. Unless, of course, you're going to shul. Then you can rush. Because to go to a holy place, you can rush. From dealing with your affairs. So it doesn't mean forbidden work, but it means not to discuss, not to be involved in your affairs and, or, thinking about your business and talking about it. You can talk about charity matters. V'dabir davar, speaking idle words. So your words on Shabbos shouldn't be like your words of the week. In other words, you shouldn't talk about business. You shouldn't talk about things that, about what you want to do after Shabbat. You should only concern yourself with matters of Shabbat. Dibra aser, mutter, hira mutter. You're not supposed to speak, but you can think, because sometimes it's hard to avoid thinking. So what does it mean that you're walking on Shabbat? And let me switch this to make it easier to read. That you're walking on Shabbat should not be like you're walking during the week. What does this mean? It means that if you were walking Shabbat and you came upon a stream of water, if the stream is narrow and you could place this first foot down without for raising, it's permitted to cross it. But if you have to jump, it's prohibited. You're not supposed to jump. But then Rava agrees. It would seem that you could, that if you walk, it's better to jump than to get your clothing wet, and then you may squeeze them out. Okay. So then the Gemara says that if you exert yourself too much, it affects your eyesight. But when you say Kiddush, that's when we look at the candles, by the way, during Kiddush, to restore the eyesight that we may have harmed by running around Erev Shabbat. Okay, and now we got to move on. And now we go here. Okay, so now we go back to the Aggadot. So this is with regards to Shabbat clothes. The Gemara is suggesting that even way back when in the biblical period, people wore special clothes for Shabbat. So you know that Naomi tells Ruth to put on her nice clothing and go down to the threshing floor and demand of Boaz that he marry her as the closest relative of her deceased husband. So Naomi told Ruth, anoint yourself and put on your robes. So what garments are these? These are the garments of Shabbat. Because you understand that even the poorest Jew, even someone like Ruth and Naomi were poor, they had special garments for Shabbat. So since we're talking about Ruth and Shmuel, it says, Ten lechacham v'yach kamod, give to a wise man and he will do more and he will become even wiser. So Ruth and Shmuel both added to advice they were given with their own wisdom. So whereas Naomi told Ruth, you shall bathe and anoint yourself and put on your garments and go down to the threshing floor. But Ruth, it says she went down to the threshing floor and only then she did everything she was commanded. Why? So people shouldn't suspect her of doing anything wrong. And what's with Shmuel? Eli said to Shmuel. So if you remember, so now we have to go to Shmuel. So because we haven't necessarily read the book of Samuel recently, here's the background. Chana, as you know, was barren for many years. It's the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah. Shmuel's mother, she prayed to Hashem, and Hashem answered her prayers, and she promised that the child she would be born, the first child she would give birth to, she would dedicate him to Hashem. So at 2 or 3, she brought him to the Beit HaMikdash. Shmuel was a Levi to assist Eli, the high priest. And when he was still a very young boy, Shmuel hears a voice saying, Shmuel, Shmuel. So he goes to Eli, and Eli says, I didn't call you. Then he hears the voice, Shmuel, Shmuel again. And he goes to Eli, and Eli says, I didn't call you. But he says, go lie down. And the second time, if Hashem calls you, say, speak Hashem, for your servant is listening. Because Eli understood that Shmuel was a very, very holy child, that it was the voice of prophecy was hearing. Hashem was speaking to him. So he told him, lay down. If you hear the call again, say, speak Hashem, because your servant is listening. Because everyone but Moshe, as you know, receives Nevuah in a trance, like in a dream. What did Shmuel do? Hashem came and called him again, Shmuel, Shmuel. And Shmuel says, speak Hashem. And he didn't say, speak, because your servant is listening, and didn't say, speak Hashem. Why? Because he didn't want to act arrogantly, as if he was sure Hashem was speaking to him. So until Hashem revealed himself, until God revealed himself to Shmuel, so Shmuel was wise. Even though Eli told him, say, speak Hashem, Shmuel recognized that he needed to act with humility. Now, so she went and she came and she collected in the field. Omar Rebbe Lazar, Shahochul Vasa, Hochul Vasa. So here's again, so with Ruth, if you remember, Ruth and Naomi came back to the land of Israel. They were very poor, so they went to collect in the field. The rule is that when stalks fall down from the reapers, the poor people can go collect whatever falls off their sickles, and they don't collect when it falls. So why did Boaz notice Ruth? Because she kept coming until she found proper people to go with. In other words, she didn't just go and grab. She wanted to make sure she was with people that were proper and would treat her correctly. And Boaz said to the young man, who is this girl? Was it then the way of Boaz to inquire about a young woman? It's not necessarily modest. So Rebbe Lazar says he saw that she was wise, that she knew the Torah, because she collected 2 stalks but not 3. The halacha is, the law in the Torah is that if 3 stalks drop from the reaper's hand, it belongs to the owner. 2 stalks at a time belong to the poor people. So most poor people didn't care; they grabbed what they could. But she followed the law of the Torah. So we saw that she was learned in the Torah and knew all the nuances of the laws, that she had worked very hard to understand the law. So Boaz saw something great in her. He saw, he sensed that greatness would come from her. So in the next piece, it doesn't necessarily mean that Boaz knew that what he said was symbolizing, but he understood something, and what he said turned out to be a prophecy. So Boaz says, Gushi Halom, come here. And the word for here is Halom. So Rebbe Lazar says he told her that the kingdom, the dynasty of David will come out from you. That it says Halom, as it says, Hashem, David came and said before Hashem, who am I, Hashem, that you brought me to Halom till here? So the word Halom is an unusual use of the word here, and it appears by King David thanking God for making him king, and it appears by Boaz speaking to Ruth. So we say there's a prophetic sense here. In other words, even though Ruth was a new convert and had come from Moab and was poor and so on, the whole point of this Gemara is that that Boaz saw greatness in her, because it's not for nothing that this particular convert became the ancestor of David HaMelech. She was a very lofty soul and a very special person, and that's what the Gemara is pointing out. That it's not just that she was eligible, that Boaz should marry her, as was the custom to marry the widow of someone who was related, but rather this is the greatness. And also a practical point with regards to dip your bread in vinegar. From here we see that vinegar is good to have in hot weather. The exact medical nature of that is vinegar is obviously an astringent and so on, but apparently vinegar, the sages saw that people had their bread with vinegar in times when it was very hot. And because it was already the harvest season in Israel, the wheat harvest season, which is around Shavuot time, May, June, those who have been in Israel know that it gets quite hot already, especially in the valleys, which is where they were. And there's more hints here. When he said vinegar, you're going to have one descendant who'll be as bad as vinegar. That was Manasseh, who was the most evil of the kings of the Davidic dynasty. Again, these are all things that are hinted in his words that appear in the text that later appear to be prophetic. He said, and you'll sit on the side of the harvesters, not among the harvesters. He hinted that ultimately the kingdom of David will be divided in the future, and her descendants won't always be at the center of everything going on in Israel. Okay. So now the Gemara asks, how do you know that changing your clothes for Shabbat or another time is a honor? So how do you know that changing clothes display of honor? Because on Yom Kippur, it says that each time Aaron goes out of the Holy of Holies, in the Holy of Holies, remove his garment and don other garments. And this is actually about, this is about the, you take out the ashes from the temple every morning. It says you take out other garments. The Kohen takes out the ashes because the garments that you prepare food for your master, you don't serve him at the table with. So in other words, when one comes stand before Hashem, whether it's Shabbat or in the temple, a person should go, and now we say that clothing honor you, and so there's a saying that I heard that a person, it says that you should always try to have a smile on your face because your face doesn't belong to you, it belongs to everyone around you. So too, we are who we are. The reason to express dignity in one's clothing is out of respect for those around you. You show that you're showing yourself to them, that you respect them, and you're not showing yourself as a shlum. And that's why it says it's disgraceful for a Torah scholar to go out and patch shoes. Didn't Rabbi Bar Chanina go on and patch shoes? It's only for patch shoes. Where's a patch upon a patch? In other words, if your shoes, to patch a shoe, we understand. Shoes were expensive, relatively speaking, in those days. But once you need to put patches on patches, you probably should get a new pair. A Torah scholar on whose clothes a fat stain is found, and this is, of course, hyperbole, is liable to receive the death penalty. So those who cause me to be hated. In other words, you don't want people to think that Torah scholars are dirty and don't take care of their clothing and so on. In other words, wearing nice, clean clothing is respect for others and causes others to have respect for you. And even though it's an externality, sometimes externalities are important. Okay, and then we go back.
Rabbi,
Yes.
You were talking about something external. So a piece of clothing can also be something we want to express, something for the external. So
Right.
because clothing is also an object that is part of our own definition. Yeah.
Right. That's why historically, Jews wore clothing that told people they were Jews. No, that's for sure. But my point is, it's still an expression to those around you. It's not an expression to yourself, it's an expression to those around you. So wearing uh, clean, neat clothing is an expression of respect to the people who you encounter. And you don't want, and you want, especially someone who's a Torah scholar, you want them to respect the person by virtue of understanding that the person respects them.
Yes,
Because even if
exactly.
it's a
So,
means of expression, it's ultimately expression to the other.
yeah, how you tell the other what you have, or not what you have. I'm
Or
sorry,
what you
it's
value.
not that. Yeah, and where do you stand for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we can also spot on somebody's clothing cultural aspects and taste and many things, and also respect or disrespect. But there is some kind of identity in this kind of expression
Right,
as well.
which is why one of the way, again, in other words, the idea is that Judaism should permeate the entirety of the person, and therefore even the most external things, such as the clothing you wear, and that's why we change our clothing Shabbat. That the Shabbat permeates us even to the most external aspect of our being.
Mhm.
Um,
Is there any color which is unfit for Shabbat?
I don't know if there's a particular color. It should just be, nicer clothing than a person wears during the week. I mean, it's brought down that it's customary, for Jewish women not to wear bright red. But other than that, I don't know. And
Okay.
again, it's a custom. It's not a law. It's just
Mhm.
okay. And now we're gonna move on. We have time for one more thing. Okay. So now we're gonna talk about something interesting here, about Sfarim, about scrolls, as to who wrote them and so on. And we need to go to page 116, page 116a.
This is also a bit funny when you say, now we are going to talk about something interesting. It seems that the other things were not so
No, I
interesting.
didn't mean that. Okay.
But I understand. I understand. It's just that it sounds funny.
Okay, here. Okay. So we're dealing here with, if there's a fire burning on Shabbat, you can move away holy texts to prevent them from being burning. So it says, with regards to the blank folios, in other words, of just plain parchment, and the Torah scrolls of heretics, we don't rescue them from the fire. Why do we not rescue them from the fire? Because since it's Torah scroll written by a heretic. In other words, there's all these different groups that rejected fundamentals of Judaism. The Sadducees, the early Christians, who were originally a Jewish group. So if they write a Torah scroll because they have a different understanding of God or of Torah, the intention makes it as if it was a secular book. So not only are you not allowed to use them in the synagogue, if they're in the way of a fire on Shabbat, you're not allowed to rescue them. You have to let them burn. Okay. Now, so now we say so Amos. Okay, very interesting here. Now here's something very interesting. So there. What about the books of the house of Abidan, who was a heretic, And even what about if they had Jewish books in there? And then he goes on, very interesting, apropos of today. So these heretics were apparently the early Jewish Christians. In other words, and they, as you know, tried very hard to convince other Jews to follow them. Ultimately, it became a Gentile thing, and that. But Reb Meir have a correlate Oven Gilyon, and Rabbi Yochanan have a correlate Avon Gilyon. In other words, this, by the way, was censored out of the Talmud, only put back in recently in the land of Israel. The Christian authorities censored it out. So originally the New Testament was called the Evangelion, and he called it the wicked folio, and Rabbi Yochanan called it the sinful folio. Play on words. That's what they called it, the Evangelion. We call it Evangelion or Avangelion. In other words, it's specifically referring to the early Jewish Christians who rejected very important points of Judaism, and basically said, that their writings, their testament is essentially an attack on Judaism, which if you read it, it really is. Okay, Ima Shalom, the Visud Rebbe Lezer. Ima Shalom was the wife of Rebbe Eliezer and the sister of Gamliel. Ima Shalom is mentioned many times in the Talmud. She was a very learned woman, very well educated in other areas, a very, very capable intellectual. And there are a good number of women like this mentioned in the Talmud. Ima Shalom is mentioned many, many times. She married Rebbe Eliezer and was the sister of Rabban Gamliel, who's Rabban Gamliel III. And there was a philosopher in there. Now they call it a philosopher, but by tradition, this was a Notzri. He went around telling everyone he doesn't accept bribes. So so she wanted to mock him and reveal the truth about it. He was a judge. He was a judge, and this is already in the maybe already we're getting to the time where now. By the way, it may have been another heretical group. I don't know why Stein's not so sure that it was a Christian. It may have been some other group, but the point is that had been appointed to a high level by the Romans, and she wanted to mark them. So she gave him a golden lamp, and then she came with her brother. Approaching him as if they were seeking judgment, and she said to this philosopher, to this religious philosopher who was also a judge, "I want to share in the inheritance of my father's attain." So Rabbi Leal says it's written in our Torah. There's a son the Torah does not inherit. So the philosopher says to them, "Since you were exiled from your land, the Torah of Moses was taken away." And by the way, this has to be the Rabban Gamliel, the patriarch who lived in the 4th century. Because in the times of the Mishnah, they didn't have power. But after the Roman Empire became Christian, under Constantine, they began oppressing the Jews. So this would have to be Rabbi Gamliel the Amora, not the rabbi of the Israeli Talmud, not of the Mishnah. So he says the Torah of Moses was taken away and the Avon Gilyon was given its place. And it's written in the Avon Gilyon, a son and daughter should inherit alike. And I don't know where it says this. This is clearly some other writing, because I do not believe it's in the New Testament. Not that I'm an expert in it, but at any rate, this Christian judge said that he gets it. So the next day, Rabbi Gamliel brought a present to the philosopher, a Libyan donkey, and he said, "I proceeded to the end of the Evangelion. It says, 'Did not come to subtract from the Torah of Moses, not come to add to Torah of Moses.' And it's written, the Torah of Moses, there's a son that does not inherit." So she said to me, "Your light shine like a lamp. I gave you a lamp." So Gamliel said to him, the donkey came and kicked the lamp, revealing, because the donkey was very valuable, revealing that he took a bribe, then he took a bigger bribe, and he ruled according to the bribe. And they revealed that this guy was a faker and a fraud, and so on. And this is clearly going to the time when when after the Roman Empire, after Constantine adopted Christianity, they began persecuting the Jews and trying very hard to convince them to convert. So again, this actually is in the editions of the Talmud that you often see. This piece is missing or distorted, but this is the actual things. This is actual reference to the early conflict and attempts by the church, both while it was a Jewish movement and especially later, once it had power from the Romans, to attempt to force their religion on the Jews. So there's a lot going on here about the early oppression of Jews by the early church. So it's a very interesting piece, actually. And with that, we shall conclude and move on. But this is a famous story. The donkey came and kicked the lamp over. So in other words, he was an honest judge. He always gave the case to the person who gave the bigger bribe. They say that in Italy, an honest judge is someone who does what they're actually bribed to do. So to here, he did what he was bribed to do, and the bigger bribe he gave. So at least he was consistent. There's this kind of honesty. There's a Western short story. I forget whether Zane Grey or someone else. One of that literature where there's this guy who's a hitman. So someone gives him $1,000 to go kill someone. So the guy says, "Listen," he says, "I'll give you $2,000 to go kill the guy who sent you." So the guy kills the person who gave him the $2,000 and kills the guy who gave him the $1,000 because he's honest. He give me money, I kill the person, and that's it. So this is that kind of judge. So which is obviously not the kind of judge that the Torah recommends. And the point, and the larger point here is that the moment that you say that, well, I believe in the Torah, but we're going to add stuff to it and we're going to change it. The moment the Torah becomes fungible, everything goes out the window. If the Torah is fungible, then all concepts of honesty and decency are also fungible. Okay. And with that, we'll conclude. And we'll see you all, God willing, after Shabbat. And those who I'll see on Shabbat, that's great too. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And hope you have your fasting. You have an easy fast. And all the best. Take care.
Is there a lunch and learn or a fast and learn?
Yeah, there is a lunch and learn. I wrote in the email. Yeah, we have lunch and learn today, 12:30. I wrote in the email, no lunch, but come learn anyways. No lunch this week. Yeah, so 12:30, we'll have 15 minutes on the Parsha. Thank you very much.
Learning.
Take care, everyone. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom Varach.